And greetings. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. I am Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. Coming up next hour, it'll be Feedback Friday. We are welcoming back a special friend who always puts my teeth on edge, and that is conservative comedian Tim Young. He is here for the Deace Group. It's good to see you, Tim. How you been, brother? It's been a minute.
I know. You guys don't like me on your show. Apparently, the executives probably said, hey, chill out with Tim with all this Russian money going around. But look, hey, there's I feel like we're in a competition.
And we're off.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like we're in a competition for who's got more junk behind us today.
That is true. I mean, how much, set your feet, as Todd would say, between you and I, how much set your feet are in our respective dens of iniquity and idolatry, do you think? Who's going to win that, do you think? It's going to be a close race.
I think you got me today, but I'm not in the right room for that.
You've got an even more obnoxious room than what is behind you, brother?
This is my living room. This is like just the kind of the corner, and I put a couple of things up. You're just looking. I mean, this isn't even the whiskey room. We're not even in the good stuff yet.
That's the living room. Todd, your thoughts, and good morning to you, by the way.
Hello, all.
Aaron, how are you? Indeed. How are you, Aaron? How are you doing back there?
Well, I have the least amount of junk, and it's the only junk that I need, and it's not junk at all. It's my 100% biblical worldview certified plaque. So I've got all of you beat. That
was a crazy game last night with your Chiefs, brother. That was a crazy game last night.
That was a
and
good
the way
game.
that thing ended.
Yeah.
The way that thing ended with the toe on the line, that was a crazy game. You know, the thought dawned on me this morning when I got up, and I just didn't post about it because I wanted to spring it on you, Aaron, live first. Are the Kansas City Chiefs really the ultimate portrayal of American culture as it currently stands? Let me lay this out for you for just a second. All right. We have this very high profile celebrity relationship on one hand between relationship, I guess, I don't know what's true, what's not, between Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, that is in many respects checks every box of the spirit of the age. On the other hand, we've got a team holding on to a mascot. They're the last holdout, I believe, maybe in all of sports, as I start to think about it. Are you guys in pro sports anyway? Are you all the last holdout? The Blackhawks are still
Braves,
there. Yeah.
Atlanta.
Braves too. Yeah. Okay, forgot about them. But you guys are still holding on to the politically incorrect Native American mascot. You're there in the most churched non-LDS state in the country. Your owner is from a long-standing evangelical family, and the wife of the star player is FML Trump supporter. Okay, I mean, in many respects, that team is a snapshot of American culture in many. And I didn't even mention Harrison Butker, who's our first half man of the year. Okay, I mean, that team is a bouillabaisse of Americana and the state of American culture right now.
I'll take that over you calling it the spirit of the ages team going into the playoffs last year. So I'm fine with that characterization.
Todd, seriously, have you thought about that, or am I just a loser? I mean, which is possible entirely, of course. But has there ever been a sports team that you can think of that more? I thought I should answer that before I let Tim do it. All right. But has there ever been a sports team that more embodied numerous aspects? Because a lot of times when you, me, and Tim were growing up, the culture war stuff stayed out of sports. That's one of the reasons everybody loved it. But we're in an era now where that's not the case anymore. And so, has there ever been a team that more embodied all the various angles here than the Kansas City Chiefs do? Everybody's views are represented somewhere within that mythos of that team.
You don't want me to comment and say the chief competitor to that is like the Harbaugh-led Michigan team. So I think we should go on to discuss whatever nonsense is in our issue 1.
You can say whatever you want about the Harbaugh-led Michigan team. We won the Natty. I've got about 75 pieces of memorabilia on the various walls in this man cave to chronicle it. I was there. I watched the Rose Bowl happen. So, I mean, I don't care. We won the Natty. That doesn't matter. But anyway,
lying,
Tim, what do you think?
And cheating and
we had the only
on,
outspoken pro-life coach and so on and so forth. Indeed. Yeah.
Well, like I said, there's competitors. All I'm saying is there's competitors.
Tim, what do you think?
Hey, did Lauren Chen ever review Nefarious? I have.
I have. What? I have. 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 I
I just want to know what Putin thinks about it.
Maybe we should talk about Michigan football and Harbaugh.
I have no idea if she reviewed Nefarious or not. I don't know. I got sent, I think in this audience, everybody sent me, I got sent a video by everybody that ever reviewed Nefarious, because that's, our audience, that's how they roll. They back us up. They've got our back, but I don't recall seeing her name in the queue. No, I don't. But then again, I don't understand Cyrillic. So let's get to it. It's time for the Deace Group. All right, hold on to your butts. Your weekly look at the week that was begins, as it always does, with issue 1. Bleep Lord Nefarious says.
Let us understand, which we do, our purpose at this very moment. Let us remember the broad shoulders upon which we stand and the traditions of this very fight that have led to what we have been able to accomplish.
My daughter's 4 years old. I am an anti-racist educator, quote unquote. She's still watching Disney movies, and she is choosing a white princess over princesses of color.
Have you talked to her about that?
All the time.
My 3-year-old daughter is her favorite princess is Moana.
Love it.
It's a good sign.
Yeah.
But then I also thought, there's a little bit of cultural appropriation here. She wants to be Moana for Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we navigate that? Do I go and buy the Pacific Islander native attire for my white 3-year-old?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
But I guess what we might call the Moana problem here is what, on one hand, there's cultural appropriation. On the other hand, there's gravitating towards white characters.
Right.
So it's almost like no matter which way you go, you end up back in racism.
We think every space belongs to us because we live in a white supremacist society.
Is America an inherently racist country?
I think the word inherent is challenging there. If we say...
Fundamentally,
yes. America is racist to its bones. All of the...
So inherently.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom.
The idea that you said that you were in war. Yeah. Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct.
So what I told him was if you tax unrealized gains, you're going to kill the stock market, right? I can't repeat it enough. Even though she's not directly conflicting the Biden tax plan, to her value proposition is we need to tax everybody fairly.
Let us finally pass an assault weapons ban and universal background checks.
So Donald Trump was recently shot at one of his rallies. How do you feel about that?
I wish he would have gotten shot in the forehead.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he's basically like teaching our country like what communism is like, so.
So you wish death upon someone?
Him, yeah, unfortunately. I hate to say that because I don't have hatred in my soul at all.
That has to be satire, right?
It has to be. It absolutely has to be. Okay, because if it's not, I have great respect for Tim's ability, and I hasten to say this hesitant to say this for fear that he'll test me, for his ability to have an acerbic edge with a sense of humor. You have a hard time topping that, if that's real. All right, but Tim, we're going to let you go first since you are the guest. First question goes to you. What was the most disturbing thing you just saw, and why?
Nothing. This was actually, usually I come on here and I feel like the end of the world is coming, and this was so light that nothing really stood out to me as being disturbing. Is that a problem? Have I become acclimated to how?
I had a real tough time this week, actually. Real tough time with this montage this week. It's not
so
just
America's great again. We haven't even voted yet. America's great again, just like that.
Well,
Aaron, you can't even come up with a montage.
It was tough.
When I come on the show, when I watch the show, I usually judge how bad things are by how bad Todd's hair is. And today it's put together. He seems organized. Look at that. He pulled out a brush today. I think we've got a calm week on our hands. Probably the last one before the election.
No brush. A brush hasn't touched this head in, probably since I was 12.
Since I was 12. Since I was.
It just is, baby. It just is.
Todd's like, it's just a bar of soap. I put it on top of my head and stand in the shower for 10 minutes. That's all I do. That's all I got to do right there. Yes.
That's it. That's it.
Oh, gosh. All right. Todd, what did you... I'm sorry. Todd, what did you think was the most disturbing thing in Aaron's montage? Do you agree with the cynical comedian that there was really nothing there that was all that disturbing by today's daily standards?
By today's daily standards, probably. I think the most disturbing thing is that now, for a second time, Matt Walsh, one of the most popular conservative pundits in the nation, continues to hoodwink these damn fools like this.
Yes.
But yet that all the more shows, though, how pathetic it is that we keep losing to them. They're not smart. They're pathetic, terrible people. And they beat us all the time. That's the most disturbing part of that entire montage. Because look at him. He just toying with them all the time. If we were regularly people who did this out in public, stopped having excuses, it would be game over. See, that's the disconnect, and that should be deeply disturbing because we just don't have a desire to do what Matt Walsh does to these people on a regular basis. We got other things to do. We want to stay anonymous. We don't want to be called names by the likes of them. That's civilization killer stuff. I know it's going to be fun laughs. He's going to make a lot of money. We're going to go to the movies. But will we actually sustain the culture? Nah.
Yeah, that's probably going to be mine as well because he was, it's a punchline. Yeah, I used that clip as the kicker in, I think, yesterday's montage, maybe the day before's montage. It's funny, haha. And he was on with Roseanne Barr on her podcast, and she asked him, well, how do you not just burst out laughing? And he said, well, it's not hard to not laugh. The problem is not screaming at them in the room. Because at the end of the day, you cannot share a country with that at all. It's not funny. To the extent that it is, we're the joke, as Todd was saying, because we keep losing to them. So that is the most disturbing part. And yeah, this is going to be a really successful movie, I think, probably in the vein of What's a Woman? But at the same time, I really hope it hammers home. I talk about this brick wall separating reality from the silver screen. I hope that brick wall gets torn down a little bit if this thing is as successful as it looks like it could be in theaters, that people go out of there saying, nope, we can't lose to that at the granular level. We can't lose to that in our schools. No. I hope it's not just a funny laugh track. Haha, they got hoodwinked again. Although there will be comedic effect, I'm sure. I just, at the end of the day, you cannot keep losing to these people and expect to have a country left over for your children and grandchildren.
Aaron, I think you're born in 93, right?
Yeah.
So you were 11. So, Tim, Todd, and I were Gen X, so we remember it well. I am old enough to remember when the most devastating attack on a Democratic candidate since Lee Atwater finished off at the end of the Reagan era, whatever was left of the term liberal, on Michael Dukakis in '88. The most devastating line of attack that I've ever seen against a Democratic presidential candidate was the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth against John Kerry. And I mean, those ads are just seared into my, cerebellum. with the veterans coming on and talking about, hey, I was in I was in a prison camp, I was a POW, and here's John Kerry, giving testimony to Congress, basically betraying his own unit, betraying his own branch of service. I mean, they were just beyond devastating. And the response to that is Democrats tried to change the rules for outside groups running ads because they were just so annihilated by the idea that someone would run for president of the United States on what is known as stolen valor. And that was 2004. And I know that was 20 years ago, but, we had HD TV and we had, cell phones, and we were beginning to get Wi-Fi, and, we're only a year away from the iPhone. It was kind of the dawn of the era we're in now. And now we're at a time that Tim Walz is sitting there, and you're had. If Dana Bash has you, you're had. Okay. I mean, that is like Saddam Hussein being cornered by Tariq Aziz. If you're cornered in an interview with Dana Bash as a Democrat, then, UGLY, you ain't got no alibi, you ugly, hey, you ugly. I mean, you're without excuse. And the idea that there are so many other problems with this guy, the groomer stuff, the sociopathic lying about everything, which the stolen valor stuff is a part of, the kill 'em all amendments or the kill 'em all bills he did in Florida. There are so many things about this guy that are so problematic that the idea that even when questioned, he has no defense for clearly lying about his own service in the armed forces. And now we're all sitting here and we're just like, yeah, I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, look what else is going on in the culture. That just kind of stood out to me for how much things have deteriorated over the last 20 years. Because I'm old enough to remember a presidential election was at least partially decided on this issue. And now we're all just kind of like, we've got so many other problems with this guy. Let's just move on. We don't have time to even get into that.
I think you might be understating, actually, the impact of this. It's just felt in a different way. Yeah, that was a big deal. That was a big deal 20 years ago because we actually had some semblance of a media that was pretending to do its job. And so they made it a big deal. From what I've seen, and I have a few like one-person normie focus groups, some of whom are veterans, there are a few of whom go out of their way to kind of bury their head in the sand when it comes to politics. They know about this story, and it pisses them off. So I think you might be understating that just a little bit. I'm not trying to go Pollyanna, but I think you might be understating that.
Okay. I just like that I can lie now and blame it on my grammar.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I completely forgot about that. Yes, indeed. All right, let's get to the exit question on a scale of 1 to 10. With 1 being the odds that Hitler is in heaven, and 10 being the odds Hitler had sex with more women than Lindsey Graham has. Rank this week's level of total depravity, Tim Young.
Hitler's not in heaven, but my rate is 1.
That is how relaxed you thought that montage was.
Oh, it was chill. I thought it was great this week. This is a nice week. Like I said,
it was cathartic.
Yeah.
All right, Todd.
That's because the fog of football season has taken over, so I'm still going to keep it as a 9.
I like it. We're anesthetized. All right, Aaron.
I'm Catholic. Can I use that?
Touchdown!
Because I don't want to answer 1, but I really thought it was not that.
Yeah, because you don't want to go after your own work, right? So, give yourself how about a 3 or a 4?
Okay.
Good with that?
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I don't like that the option was like pro-Hitler. If I thought the week was great, you had to get me to be pro-Hitler.
Yeah, are you a Hitler apologist now, Steve?
We all decided that apparently as an industry and movement that 8 weeks before an election, we're trying to get a guy elected that the entire media conglomerate industrial complex has tried to call literally Hitler for 9 years. We just decided to bring on some obscure Twitter dude no one's ever heard of and relitigate Winston Churchill versus Adolf Hitler on our biggest platform. I don't know why we did this. I don't know what strategic thought went behind that. I have no idea what audience that was for or what purpose it served, but here we are. Indeed, here we are. Before we get to issue 2, A word about our friends over at Patriot Mobile. They have been on the vanguard of helping to build the parallel economy. And I'm just telling you, anywhere I go speak around the country, whether it is a Christian Filmmakers Conference back in June in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, whether it's the Family Leadership Summit right here in Des Moines earlier this summer, I mean, everywhere I go, I see their representation. I mean, when we talk about them truly being on the vanguard of building the parallel economy and reinvesting back into the kingdom and back into the country, I see visible signs of it. I mean, we did the nefarious symposium at the Pigeon Forge conference in a hall that was sponsored by Patriot Mobile. So it's not just a great service. Our family uses Patriot Mobile, has enjoyed using them for the last couple of years, but it also does a service to the country as well if you make the switch today. Go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. You can keep your phone, upgrade your phone, keep your number, switch your number, whatever you want to do. And if you're a veteran or first responder, not named Tim Walls, let them know when you go to make the switch. They've got extra ways to say thank you for your actual service. But absolutely everybody can get a free month of service if they make the switch today at patriotmobile.com/Steve using the offer code Steve. patriotmobile.com/Steve using the offer code Steve. Let's get to issue 2, a debate preview.
The first and probably only presidential debate is this coming Tuesday between former President Donald Trump and current Vice President Kamala. The past couple of weeks, the Kamala camp has raised a brouhaha over debate rules they had previously agreed to, namely that microphones would be muted for the duration of that debate while the other candidate is speaking. Kamala has been on the campaign trail this week. Here she is in New Hampshire.
Let us understand, which we do, our purpose at this very moment. Let us remember the broad shoulders upon which we stand and the traditions of this very fight that have led to what we have been able to accomplish.
Trump, on the other hand, has been all over the place doing a number of events, podcasts, and rallies, including this town hall with Sean Hannity earlier this week.
If she won, you're not going to have any fracking in Pennsylvania. You have 500,000 jobs. Think of that. It's your biggest business. And you get a big majority of your income from fracking. And you have somebody that's not going to allow fracking. She's not going to allow it. You can't take the chance. You have no choice. You've got to vote for me. You've got to vote for me. You got to. Even if you don't like me, you know? Yeah. It's no, but even if you don't like me, you can sit there and say, I can't stand that guy, but there's no way I'm going to vote for her.
The debate is this Tuesday, televised on ABC at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
So, Todd, you get the first question this round. Could this debate be, and we're going to have tons of coverage here on BlazeTV of the debate Tuesday night, by the way. I'm flying down to Dallas Monday to be a part of that, so looking forward to that. But, Todd, could this debate be as meaningful for Kamala Harris as the June 27th debate was for Joe Biden?
No, for a couple reasons, and I'm still going to stick with my prediction. I still don't think the debate is going to happen. It's not going to surprise me if it does, but I still, I predicted, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, that the debate would never happen and that no unscripted interviews would happen, and that's still true because that bash thing was absolutely scripted. But if it does happen, the reason I don't think is because it's all in on Kamala now. With the press and everything, there's the reason it ultimately went the way it went for Biden is because they stopped being his prop, lifting him up, lying for him, pretend. It was just weeks before that you said, "How dare you say he's missing a step?" Once they decided they wouldn't be all in for him, they were going to go to Kamala. But there's nothing after this. So I don't think it can be as devastating because the press won't let it and America, isn't paying attention enough. I mean, can it change some hearts and minds? Yes. And as Steve has said just yesterday, I think, and he's absolutely right. We're talking about slivers here, so that's meaningful. But I don't think it can be as devastating for her, even if she does terrible, because the press has got to cover for her.
All right. Aaron, what say you?
No, I'm kind of in the same vein as Todd. This is a full court press here. What was as damaging to Joe Biden as his just apparent lack of mental competency not being able to finish, start, or even go in the middle of sentences. That was damaging in and of itself. The stark visual was just as damaging, I would say. They're going to pull out all the stops to make sure Donald Trump looks as old as possible and Kamala Harris looks as powerful as possible. I don't know what that looks like, but they're going to pull out all of the stops. Basically, all Kamala has to do is just talk crazy word salad like you just heard in that clip from her in New Hampshire this week. That's all she has to do, really. Now, that's going to rankle feathers from people who are actually paying attention, but basically all she has to do is just make sure that she doesn't provide a clear, mental lapse. She just has to do word salad, and that's going to be the only bar she has to clear. So this is not going to be as even high of a bar as Joe Biden had.
Tim, what do you think?
Oh boy! Number one, I was in Todd's. I was in the same mindset as Todd that this wasn't going to happen up until the other day. I think they're going to cover for Kamala. I think everyone else is going to cover for Kamala. I'm not sure. Is George Stephanopoulos one of the moderators? Who's moderating this?
I'm sure he is. I'll double check on that.
Yeah, he's the biggest name ABC News has. I'd be stunned if he's not one of the moderators.
Yeah, if he's moderating, then he's obviously going to side for her and try to bias it towards her. They're not going to get the clip of her talking over Trump or calling him a racist while he's talking or whatever. But they are going to get the clips out of this that they need. But I think overall, other than Stephanopoulos, I feel like I'm selling out here, but I actually trust the ABC News production team on this one because I know some of them. And I mean, they're going to try to make her look good after the fact, and everyone's going to dance around, and all the excuses are going to be made. And if it's Stephanopoulos moderating, then he's going to try to cover for her and obviously attack Trump.
I just looked this up. It's actually going to be according to ABC News, it's actually going to be David Muir and Lindsay Davis moderating.
David Muir has been one of the best as far as mainstream media goes. He's been one of the least biased. He's been doing all of their specials that have been hitting record numbers, and I actually hate to tell you this, guys, I trust him.
I wonder if the Trump lawsuit is why they've refused numerous requests Kamala has made to amend the rules over there. I wonder if Trump suing them maybe has caused them to at least give the impression that this is all on the up and up because there's a pre-existing legal issue between Trump and ABC News, perhaps. I agree that per scale, that it cannot be as impactful as June 27th because the timing, now we are in the era of ballots being printed. Voting is going to begin in several crucial states next week. And so we are at the point now where the die is cast. They're stuck with her till November the 5th, regardless of what happens here. So in terms of one-to-one scaling, no. I mean, nothing as impactful as replacing your candidate in the middle of the campaign can occur here. But per capita, if we prorate it, I do think it could be as impactful because we are dealing with slivers of demographics here. And I mean, we're dealing with we're dealing with slim margins of subset of demographics, like not even Hispanic voters. We're really talking about non-college educated Hispanic men. Right? We're not even talking about white males. We're really talking about how many white males with a bachelor's degree vote and how many white males without a college degree at all vote. We're dealing with, to use a football term I know Todd will love, we're dealing with sub packages here. We're not even dealing with your normal top line demographics. That's how tight the margins are in this thing right now. And so because of that, I think when you prorate it, this could be as impactful, especially if it is, as Aaron said, the only time we see these two together on the stage. That brings me to the exit question. Predict what you think will be the big story coming out. We've got about a minute. Tim, go.
I think that Kamala held her own and was a girl boss. The story from the mainstream media will be that she is the winner because she showed that she's presidential, even though it doesn't matter what she said.
Indeed, I do think the narrative will include something involving girl boss no matter what happens. I agree with that. Todd?
That was going to be my exact answer. Tim and I agree wholeheartedly.
You're going to see all of the headlines about Biden post that debate about Donald Trump. You're going to have Alzheimer's experts out there. They're going to gaslight the hell.
Well, I predicted this, that MSNBC would bring the exact same Alzheimer's expert that they used to condemn Biden in June. They'd bring that exact same guy back in September and October to do that to Trump. The exact same thing. All right, we'll come back on issue 3. Let's discuss what conversations. Let's have a broader conversation about broader conversations that should or should not happen on the right. Next. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre, joined by our good friend who makes us all very nervous. Nice. Oh, yeah, that happened.
It's not even for sale anywhere. Somebody made that for me. It's very nice.
You know what? Can we pause for just a second since you brought that up? That's our good friend, our contributor on the roundtable here today, conservative comedian Tim Young. Tim, I know you listen to the show regularly. I don't know if you heard me say this a few weeks ago. I think since in the last few weeks, I really think the Trump campaign has largely been a well-oiled machine. I've been very impressed overall. At the very least, they've made their margin of cheating way more difficult. I'll give them that. That's the least they've done. The least they've done is put themselves in position to be in position. That's the least I think they've done. Okay. But a few weeks ago, before this few week period, I was very frustrated. And one of the things I mentioned, I could not understand. Like, if you would have told me, 48 hours after the assassination attempt, that I would have been like, why didn't we milk that more? Because I would have been far more predictive that at some point this had gone so over the top idolatrous that my sanctimonious streak would kick in. Okay. Instead, like, the guy who sells hems of his garment from the suit jacket he wore when he got his first indictment and digital trading cards, I was like, why didn't we milk the bleep out of this? I mean, that's the most inspirational imagery this country's produced since 9/11. I mean, I knew the media was going to memory hole it, but it kind of feels like we did. Your thoughts on that really quick?
There's been a total shift. And I think crap got real. We'll put it that way. Crap got real after he almost got assassinated. And I think he takes it much more seriously than the other stuff that he's ever done.
Okay. Let's get to issue 3 as we continue on with our weekly look at the week that was. All right. What kinds of conversations should the right be open to having?
Historian or something Daryl Cooper appeared on the Tucker Carlson show this week and made some interesting claims about a key figure of World War II.
I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities. But I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there.
So I've got a piece about this coming out at the Blaze, probably Monday, because I turned it in too late last night to be published today. And here's basically the gist of the piece. On one hand, I mean, I think Tucker's the most. I really believe Tucker is potentially the most important voice and show that this entire industry / movement, whatever we are, has produced since Rush Limbaugh. And I mean, even things like last night, him and Russell Brand just praying on the stage and mainstreaming that, I think is incredibly impactful and valuable. And I don't want us to replace, gatekeeper. We don't need any more Fox News just thinking it's their job to, hey, simmer down and pipe down over there and let the adults handle it. I don't want to do that. Okay. I don't want to limit critical thinking. I don't want to limit contrarianism. What bothered me about that conversation was not the things that that Daryl Cooper dude said, but that it never got challenged anywhere at all. I mean, he's essentially saying that Hitler was just going to take Poland and be done with it. It's just going to be a regional conflict. Of course, he invaded Poland after he told the Allies, just give me Czechoslovakia and I'll be done with it. Was he done with it, guys? Was he done with it? No, because that was a year before he invaded Poland. These are things that are easily pushed back on, easily debunked. All right, that would not stand up to its own cross-examination. When Daryl Cooper says things like, well, actually the guy who committed the most atrocities is not the villain, you don't stand up against a cross-examination of yourself, let alone someone else like me. You just don't. And that's the thing is, I mean, there have to be some guardrails somewhere. I mean, I would imagine we would not, that Tucker nor any of us here would produce a show that said, actually child porn. Actually, minor attracted persons maybe is a thing. We wouldn't do that. At least I don't think we would. So there are some guardrails somewhere. What? Because I think guardrails are different than gatekeepers. All right. Guardrails are a set of ethics. Gatekeeper are self-anointed busybodies. OK, so what's the line here and what we should be willing to entertain on the right? And so, Tim, since you are outside of our own echo chamber here on this show, I want you to start. Go ahead.
And I told the head of a TV network recently to go F himself. Listen, the DOJ did not leak a report the other day. They didn't leak an indictment. They had a press release with it where Russia is giving millions upon millions of dollars to our grifters on the right who were very, very happy and susceptible enough to take the money. Now, we'll see how far and how deep and how much they knew about it. But if somebody gave me $100,000 or offered me $100,000 or more a show to go on and scream about Ukraine, I might throw a red flag. I might ask a couple of questions. And I think we're seeing more. Because,
maybe I'm not worth that kind of money and nobody is, basically. Is that what you're saying? Yes. Yeah, I hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. No, but listen. We have grifters and goofs on our side, and we talk about this. I allude to it very heavily on your show, and we all laugh about it because we know it's inside baseball, and it's a lot of stuff that your listeners don't necessarily dig into too deeply, nor do they need to. But we know that all of these people who took the money, we've all kind of had an inkling in our minds, oh, hey, yeah, those are the guys that would do that. We do need to start self-policing. I'm happy to see these people go down. Sorry, don't defend people you don't know. If you like me, as you think I'm funny, whatever, don't defend me if something terrible comes down that's actually legal, that's attached to it. That doesn't have to do with free speech, we'll put it that way. But there are people out there who are very much so criminal, run their positions in conservatism because they've been paid to do that, or they failed in liberalism, or they failed at, say, a job on the Young Turks. And suddenly they're conservative when the Koch brothers tossed them money. We need to start paying attention to this stuff. I don't care if you like them or not. It is pervasive. It is a problem in conservative media. It's been here for a long time. And it's time that we start getting rid of these people.
All right. Todd, what do you think? As the show's ombudsman, you can react to Tim. You can react to what I'm suggesting is, can we come up with guardrails? If not, because I don't want to come up with alternative gatekeepers, man. I don't want to do that. Gatekeepers, by the way, never work for the biblical worldview. Okay, you always end up, the biblical worldview starts off thinking we're going to be the gatekeepers, and then eventually learns ain't no fun when the rabbit's got the gun. But there's got to be some guardrails somewhere. Todd, what do you think?
Yeah, but this is not a new problem. Tim's right. This is a old problem. It's been going on for a long time. I would just say you have to expand it beyond just media. This isn't just a media issue. This is the entire Republican Party, and it's why we have Trump now. So-called conservative principles turned into compassionate conservative and all kinds of other words put in front of it to modify it, end up becoming so flaccid, so meaningless. People resented it so much. Now the head of the Republican Party is Donald Trump, somebody that a lot of us knew wasn't remotely conservative, was a New York Democrat, but, grifting took over the entire thing, and Donald Trump knew a mark when he saw one. He says, yeah, I can take this thing over, and he did. I'll never say he's not conservative. He's barely a Republican, but he was right about all of that. So this has been going on for a very, very long time, and it was inevitable then that the pendulum swings way over to the side of crazy talk like this, but that hasn't been the dominant theme. It's been way over here where it's been utter meaningless. It's been a void. It's been saying things and never doing things. It's been, hey, this is our faith, but without works, it was dead. People recognized it, and they resented it, and they cast it out, and they were right to do so. And now Donald Trump is here.
Aaron?
So the stated ethics, the guardrails that you need to have. I don't have a problem with actually asking questions. Like, bring on this Daryl Cooper guy, but then bring on a World War II historian. Once this blows up in Tucker Carlson's face, bring him on to refute it. And if he can't, he can't. But it should be pretty easy to refute some of the things from what I've seen, like historical misrepresentations or inaccuracies. I've seen a couple of those with this guy. You can go to some weird places, but I think 2020 and the aftermath of 2020 has absolutely broken a lot of people's brains, and it's understandable. The institutions, you've come to find out, are totally not only corrupt but opposed to you. And so now that just it's understandable. It lends you to starting to question things that you previously didn't question. All of us on this panel probably could assent to that, at least on some level, about something that we just took for granted prior to 2020 and the aftermath of that. I think all of us would probably agree to that.
Sure.
However, there are certain things that are just simple that I think once you cross that, I understand. I've done this myself. I'm like, where along the lines did we start losing our ever-loving minds? Where did we do that? Could we solve the Rubik's Cube? And if we could solve the Rubik's Cube of when we started to lose our minds, maybe we could start to unwind this thing. And I think this is an attempt at that. That's the very best characterization that I could give of this flap this week, this thing with this Daryl Cooper guy. Where I see this, though, as this being a really fake controversy is that the same people who are sandbagging on behalf of Daryl Cooper, if the reincarnation of Winston Churchill appeared in American politics and Donald Trump wasn't a thing, they would love Winston Churchill, I would think.
He's Red Caesar.
Yes.
He's Red Caesar.
They would love him. These are the same people behind you that say, correctly so, democracy is for a word that rhymes with detards. Was it a bad thing back when they got rid of Winston Churchill's ass right after he saved their civilization?
Yes.
This is where it's really fake and really vapid to me.
Can I ask you guys a question? Can I break the format here? When Tucker Carlson went to the Russian grocery store and was wowed by the fresh bread and the conveyor belts and all the things there, did that pass the smell test for you guys?
No.
Thank you.
I don't know. And because here's the thing, Tucker has also done some of the most valuable narrative busting.
Correct.
Of anyone else in our movement.
He gave me my first big break.
He's the only guy that put me. He's the only primetime talent on Fox News that ever put me on. And Fauci and Bargan went #1 overall in the country for the second time, strictly because of him. So this is why I'm conflicted, and you'll see that when my Blaze piece comes out. I don't want to handcuff his instincts. Okay, I don't want to do that. Okay, I mean. We've got the guy with the biggest platform on our side for the first time pushing back on established narratives rather than saying we're not allowed to do that as Fox News has done for the last 25 years. I don't want to say all of a sudden now seatbelts and 10 and 2. I don't want to do that. OK, but we're all here's the thing. Let me make this very personal. I was told by a lot of some of the names we've even mentioned and referred to, directly or indirectly in this very conversation that I know and are friends of mine or contacts. I was told for the last year and a half, I'm wasting my career. DeSantis has no chance. This is you're losing capital. You could have had influence with Trump. This is the most important election ever. We have to win. We can't afford this. This entire primary is a waste of time. DeSantis is a good guy. Cannot win. He shouldn't have run. We need to unite behind Trump. We cannot afford to lose. I heard this in my private ecosystem all of last year and well into the beginning of this year by some of the same people that now want to say in the midst of this election coming down to nut cutting time, let's retcon Hitler and hand the talking point that maybe our guy really is literally Hitler to the other side, and let's go ahead and take grift from Russia so that we can give Joe and Minka the morning show that tell us to reset the narrative that the entire right is bought by the Russians. One of the reasons why I've not commented on this very much publicly is because on a personal level, I'm really bothered by that. And I don't trust my normal ability to be objective and compartmentalize, because I heard this on this phone. I heard this from friends of mine and contacts of mine all for the last year and a half. And some of those exact same people are now like, I think we should give Hitler a fresh new look. It's fall time for Hitler. Okay, we need to do that in front of. Is this the most important effing election ever or not? Is it or not? Because I kind of think it is. And I was the DeSantis stan here. And all of a sudden, but it's so important. We've got time to rediscover the nuances of the Third Reich and take $400K a month from Russia, allegedly. That's how important it is. Let's get to predictions, because I did that and we're out of time. All right. You know what? Actually, instead of predictions, I want to do this. I want to do the kicker topic. Which topic do you think the right has ignored for too long that it now needs to be open to exploring? Todd.
Being above lawfare. Specifically, it applies to education and the media. People need to pay. There needs to be prosecutions. Preach. They are guilty.
I completely agree. Completely agree. There must be mutually assured destruction now. All right. Without that, we're going to see more of our people go to prison until their people start doing it. I completely agree. There has to be mutually assured destruction.
Put the groomers in jail. Put them in jail.
I completely agree. 100% agree. Tim.
I agree with Todd. I'm going to make the prediction, though, here instead, Steve. I'm taking over. I think 4 years from now, I think it's going to be you and me are going to be two of the only last standing survivors from the conservative media of today. I mean that, and I think we're going to be on top of it.
Man, I hope that's not the case, because it means we lost a lot of people. Okay,
is that utopia or dystopia? I can't tell.
We should. I can't either. But we should lose a lot of people, dude. I tell you all the time on the phone. I'm one of those people that calls you up. You got Des Moines in your blood, man. Like, you guys think everybody's good.
I'm Iowa nice.
Bad.
I know.
Everybody's bad.
Aaron.
In the era of digital media, we need to stop whatever the instinct is, and it is a very capitalistic instinct on the part of the right-wing donor class, which the donor class is more left-wing than we would like it on our side, but we need to stop the inclination towards I always need a return on investment. We need people to absolutely bankroll digital media projects and not expect anything in return. This is the left does this ad nauseum and has for over a decade. The donor class has to change.
I completely agree. I mean, that is the number one disadvantage in our own ecosystem we have, is people like Soros who put up huge money for content that there's no ROI on because it drives his agenda. We lack those kinds of people on the right. Tim, we got to go, brother. We're out of time. Thank you for joining us as always. All right.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. We'll come back. It'll be Feedback Friday here when we do. Stay tuned. All right, we are back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Happy Friday to all of you, except Carol. Carol, my wife Amy, who handles my social media interactions and feedback, she has requested I give you, Carol, a very specific, and you know who you are, you know which Carol I'm referring to, a very specific shout out here on this Friday, that it is actually Friday and we are actually live. Because apparently you lose your cotton picking mind if we record the show on Friday and think that means we're not putting in a full week of work, even though that means we actually worked a double shift on Thursday or a previous day so we could take that Friday off. So we worked the exact same amount of hours. And if anything, made it harder on ourselves, especially Aaron, by having to come up with all the elements and everything else for 2 shows in one day rather than spreading them out over the course of every week. Yet, if we say Happy Friday and we're not live, Carol's panties get into quite the wad, and we don't want that to happen anymore, Carol. So, on your behalf and also ours, we are live here, Carol, and barely alive, and it's just for you. It's just for you. Here on this Friday.
I enjoyed having some of the 3-day weekends that we had enjoyed in August. I know my family did as well, having Daddy home for an extra day. But the pre-tapes that we do, I'm ready to be done for a while because
they're a lot of work to do all this in 2 days.
Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Yes.
Dad gets to be home on Fridays, but that means Dad's also gone for a lot longer on Wednesdays and Thursdays too. So
correct. Yes. So hopefully that's Carol approved, Aaron. We'll check with her next time. Thoughts?
Sure. Sounds good, Carol.
Yeah. All right. So Carol, it's all for you, Carol. It's all for you. You can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can email us, steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on Getter, Instagram, X, and TikTok. You can also, if you listen to the podcast version, please, if you wouldn't mind, leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate each and every one of you that has done that. You can also hit subscribe, or if you're tuned in on iTunes these days, hit follow, and that'll make sure that you can get one of our new episodes every single time right there in your podcast feed. So thank you for that. Thank you as well to our friends over at America's Christian Credit Union. Remember back in the day when the local banks used to uphold the community's values and help build the community as well. Well, today, many of these banks are global conglomerates that oppose much of what we stand for. In fact, you'll often see they're the main sponsors of the Pride Decadent Debauchery festivals every single month, or every single summer, I should say, for a month. And that's why you want to look at America's Christian Credit Union. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, man, I'd love to take part in the parallel economy, but I mean, right now the current economy means I don't have the discretionary income I used to have. Did you know, though, that ACCU has been around for 65 years? Serving Americans that are God-fearing with integrity and faith. They've got cutting-edge mobile banking. They've got access to over 5,000 shared branches and 30,000 ATMs nationwide. So this isn't a startup. Not that we don't need those, but I can understand why you might be skittish where your money is concerned. This has been around for going on now well into a second generation. All right. Plus, our listeners, if you make the switch, you can earn $400 when you open a new checking account with qualifying activities and get an additional $100 bonus with the promo code Steve at checkout. Visit America's, plural, America's Christian CU for credit union, americaschristiancu.com/Steve for full details. That's americaschristiancu.com/Steve. Terms and restrictions apply. You can visit americaschristiancu.com/Steve for complete program details and to get started. America's Christian Credit Union, federally insured by the National Credit Union Administration. All right, you guys ready for some Feedback Friday?
Let's do it.
All right, let us begin with Anne Renee Richmond in Ogden, Utah. And she says, I want to thank you guys for the fantastic show that you produce. I've been a diehard fangirl for years. I love the Evergreen episode and the long-form interview with my now pastor, Brian, and deacon and pastoral candidate, Ben. I live in Ogden. I've been on a 10-year search for a church home here when I had heard Aaron mention something about music he liked from a pastor in my area on the program. I found Refuge Church and started attending. I found a solidly biblical, well-balanced church family and recently took membership vows. I didn't know what Reformed was, and frankly, it doesn't fit. I don't fit necessarily into any one label. I just love fellowshipping with others that are determined to live out their faith. So please thank Aaron for me. God used him to lead me to where I belong. God regularly uses your show in many ways positively in my life, and I'm eternally grateful. And P.S., I didn't even know these two guys even did a podcast. I'll be subscribing now. Blessings to all of you. And that podcast, by the way, Haunted Cosmos, is phenomenal. It's just a spectacular podcast. So, Aaron, some flowers for you, brother.
Yeah, I think Brian Sauvé and Ben Garrett, Eric Kahn, I think, is also out in that church. This show, probably between the three of us, probably doesn't agree every jot and tittle of their opinions on fill-in-the-blank things. I think there is a one-to-one kindred spirit on understanding the signs of times and what to do about them, at least at the base level. And from what I've seen of that church, again, I've never been there myself, but reading about it, hearing about it, from what I've seen from them, they would be a model that you at least on some level want to replicate across the country. You might not be Reformed theology, what have you, but in terms of actually integrating a functional a functional church body in terms of education, in terms of actually doing, in terms of actually connecting, in terms of actually having meat on the bone of your faith, in terms of actions, that church, it seems to me from the outside looking in, is doing a really good job.
And I mean, I'm in a similar place with the church I'm going to right now. That ultimately, I've got some areas. I'm not a cessationist, but this is an overtly charismatic church, and I've got some areas where I'm like, just being honest, So why are we there? Because Pastor Jesse knows what time it is, and the overall arc and integrity and fullness of the scriptures are preached, and that is just not something we can take for granted anymore. And I'm at a stage in life where I am just tired of going to church. I'm tired of fighting the culture and the spirit of the age all week and going to a church, and I just walk out of there and I just hope the pastor doesn't give a sermon where he just, kneecaps me, let alone expecting it to actually be supportive of my efforts, let alone actually expecting it to be encouraging of other people to take part in these efforts and to get off the sidelines and get involved. And I'm just at a stage in life now, man, where I need backup. I need to know. I need to belong to a church that knows the church is primarily for God's people and not for the people not there. I didn't say it's only for God's people, but it is primarily for God's people and not the people not there. And much of American church is for the people not there. And so therefore it takes people like us and people like, the young lady that just emailed us and people. When I said I could just fill over devices and screens, heads nodding. When I just said a minute ago, I needed to go to a church for once where I didn't feel like the efforts that I was a part of were embarrassing to the church, that they would not encourage the people that are doing nothing in the church to do something, or would even stand up there and just kneecap me and tell me to be nice. I know, just speaking for evangelicals, I know a lot of your heads nodded when I said that, because a lot of us are going to. Because there aren't a lot of churches that do know what time it is, and I'll figure out some of the things because I'll figure out some of the things. Because here's the thing: if I have theological disagreements with Eternity Church or Pastor Jesse, I'm a big boy. Word of God is just as available to me as it is to them. I can navigate that and deal with that. And I've got other outlets for that. You know what I can't do for myself? Encourage myself. I can't encourage myself. I can't refill my tank on my own. I can't do that. I can't go out there, empty the tank all week long, and then go to church and come out of there feeling like I got nothing put back into me after leaving it all, at least my hope is every single week anyway, leaving it all out there on the battlefield. I can't do that. That I can't do on my own. And I need backup, man. I need support. We all do. Especially as it gets to be more and more negative world. Is that kind of what you were touching on there, Aaron? A little bit?
Exactly.
We'll figure out our differences and yell and scream about them, okay? Some of the guys you mentioned, I see, are much more supportive of Daryl Cooper's view of history than I currently am.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to bring them on and let's yell and scream at each other, because that'll be a hell of a lot more constructive than everybody be nice, everybody do nothing. Make sure your khakis are pleated, and the seasons are changing, so bust out the sweater vest, particularly if they're monogrammed, right? That's doing nothing for nobody. Nothing. That's watching the West die. Okay. So give me the arguments with Eric Kahn and those guys over what goes on over, let's segregate our church by vax status, like Tim Keller. I don't know about you, Aaron. I'll take the former argument any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I'll take those arguments every time.
Exactly. And those guys, I don't know them necessarily personally. I've had a few, conversations off the air, getting them lined up for the long form that we did. I don't think that they'd want you to line up every jot and tittle. That seems fake, I think, from the outside looking in to them. What they do I think what they do hold fast to is what I said before, understanding the signs of the times and what to do with them. And they have taken the route in their church, again, from the outside looking in, saying, we are going to provide alternatives in basically every way of life for you. All you have to do is be committed. That's all that they're asking. And they do enforce that. From what I have seen, they do enforce that. So they, again, kindred spirits on what to do about the signs of the times. Maybe don't agree every jot and tittle on theology, on how that's borne out. But those guys have been a blessing, at least in just haunted cosmos alone, to a lot of people.
Amen. Amen. You have any thoughts on this, Todd?
The one sentence that stuck out that he said, I don't fit into particular labels, so open to finding the truth wherever it leads. That's good, but don't err too far with that one sentence. And I don't want to put too much pressure on it, but by then rejecting labels altogether, because then you're just making a mistake in another direction. I mean, if there's a label that you've just never understood, for example, with this podcast, if for whatever reason you just couldn't go there, you never gave these guys a listen because of aliens, and trust me, this is coming from me because, as you know, it's me and Aaron, every time Steve said, you got to watch this show on aliens, and you're like, oh dear God, again. But there was levels of interest in terms of a dynamic, speaking to less about the aliens than who we are as people at a given time, what we can receive, what we're hungry for, where we can be lied to. So don't go. There's a lot of people that posture themselves in their search for faith about I reject labels. Don't play that mind game with yourself, because that can become just as big as an idol as anything else. What if that label is the truth and always has been? Go find it. I mean, Steve just talked about two of them right there: cessationism versus charismaticism. Just because they're two words that happen to be labels right now, what if one of them is ultimately true? You can't get all lost up into those word games with yourself. Find the truth. That's a good word wherever it leads.
That's a good word as well, for sure. The only reason that I don't entertain a lot of labels when we talk theology on this show is because I have found, not that I'm uncomfortable with them, I have found that too often people use them as a means by which to just either accept or shut you down without contemplating the fullness of why you would bear that label. That's always why I ask you guys, ask me a specific theological question first, okay? And I'll give you the best answer that I can where I stand. And if I'm wrong, by all means, come now, let us reason together and be good Bereans and open up the scriptures and let's roll, But my concern is not necessarily that I'm not comfortable with them myself. I think people get too often, in my position, get too comfortable with dismissing or accepting what I have to say on the basis of whether I line up with that label or not.
It's the idiocracy thing. Why come you don't got a tattoo?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. All right, let's continue on. This is from Amy Lowen. I'm a 53-year-old Christian wife, mom, former school teacher at a Christian school, and Christian university graduate. Christ has been in my life since I was 5. All this to say, I've been surrounded by Christian women all my life as well, and most, like my mom, are women of excellence. However, I've appreciated what you've been trying to get through to our tough Christian skulls regarding this election. White suburban Christian women my age and younger have largely become sheep following Instagram and podcast wolves. Since Jen Hatmaker and many other influencers have deconstructed their faith, many of my suburban white women friends have followed. These women grew up in the church and mainly good churches, but have been convinced that male headship is abuse, whites need to repent for being white, and now the biggie for all these women is accepting or better loving the LGBTQ, I add FU, lifestyles. To say one man, one woman is not being like Christ, this now overshadows their previous rants on race, immigration, and male leadership. From my view, for younger women, this even, quote, trumps abortion. I struggle with Trump, but will vote for him. Most of my conservative homeschool friends are too. However, these other women are so full of themselves and hatred, how do we reach them? Several friends are in leadership roles in large or medium-sized churches which seem progressive. Others have totally left religion. I have never seen such an angry, bitter group of self-righteous women. I believe it is also a larger group than most people think. So how do we reach them? Can we reach them? I worry if we don't. Our country is lost. So, Amy, you just did a heck of a homiletic for why the Allie Beth Stuckey show exists. Okay. I mean, and I'm sure you're familiar with Allie, but Allie's show in specific is a direct response to the phenomenon that you are describing. She is attempting to be on the vanguard of pushing back on every word that you just wrote. And I would not presume to be better at it than she is and to have better answers for it than she does. It's her native tribe. I did the best I could with the daughters that I raised, by God's grace, and a lot of heavy lifting from their mama. And Anna went through a period like a lot of kids do, where she needed her faith to be her own and figure out her place in the world. And now you kind of see that she's figured things out and landed on her feet, and you get evidence of that frequently on our show. And now it's time for our youngest daughter, Zoe, whom I absolutely adore just as much as Anna. It's time for her now, at that same age to work out her own salvation in fear and trembling, and to figure out who she is in Christ and what kind of relationship with God she's going to have. And my job now, I did the best I could to set those examples when they were growing up, but their job now is to make that connection individually with God on their own. I'm sure Todd has a lot of experience with 4 daughters. Aaron's going to get this experience now with the first of his. But the 2 things that I tried my best to model to my daughters more than anything else, and I think it's why even when they've gone through periods of questioning whether dad was right or questioning their faith systems, our relationship was strong and has maintained and continued to be strong this entire time. Number 1, sincerity. They lived with me. They know my weaknesses, faults, and they know I really believe this stuff. And they know that I've done my best to live this out and to demonstrate it. And I've been very disappointed in myself in front of them when I have not. So they didn't come out of my home for any reasons to resent me, resent the faith. Doesn't mean they agree with, as Aaron just said, every, dot and is it dot and tittle? Is that what you just said?
Jot
Aaron?
and tittle. Jot and tittle.
Jot and tittle. Thank you. Doesn't mean they agree with everything either from the old man either. Okay. But I earned their respect. They saw that. Number 2, They saw me put them and their mom ahead of myself as often as I possibly could. So they witnessed actual masculinity. They saw me do things and do things at times I didn't want to do, but I did them for them because I love them more than I love myself and what I want to do. Now, beyond that, when we're dealing with women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, I honestly don't know, which is why I've taken the opposite approach. I'm trying to reach the men in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, because I actually believe that the rise of the women that you are describing is because of the decline of the men. This is what headship means. It's not authority, it's responsibility. And do you guys remember that video came out last year with that very well-known feminist TikToker, and she met an actual man and went on a date with him? Do you guys remember this video came out last year?
Yeah.
Okay. And it just rocked her world, man. He paid for everything, was a total gentleman. He was in total control. Okay. While at the same time being gracious and courteous to her. And I mean, you could just see the look on her face, like, man, she was starstruck. She ran into an actual dude. Okay. There are very few women who, when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, and they start pondering what kind of man they want to marry, and that think, I really hope I get the guy who wears socks with sandals year round and knows what a jort is and cut off mom jeans. Very few women do that. Very few. Very few. They all start off wanting a man, an actual one. And then eventually they either give up or they thought they ran into a real man and he crushed and disappointed them. And that creates and feeds much of the frenzy, Amy, that you are articulating. So I did my best with my daughters that they would not turn out to be that bitter. And by God's grace, I have no idea how their lives will turn out. I can't sit here and tell you that they're going to walk with the Lord to the very end. I'm hoping I won't see the end of their days, that I'll be long dead. No parent wants to bury their children. I don't know that. What I can confidently tell you is that I did enough right, despite numerous mistakes, including nearly divorcing their mom, that I did enough right that they respect their daddy. When they need something, they know they can call on their daddy, and they do. And that's the W to me. And now they're adults, and now it's for them to figure out what their place in this world is going to be and what their relationship with their Lord is going to be. So from this time forward, my focus is now on the men. And I think if we had more men that were as clumsy about it as I was, or as imperfect about it as I was, but still by God's grace managed to accomplish that in my home, we'd have less women like the ones you're describing. Far less. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's they don't go to enough churches where they understand on some level the notion of the excommunications will continue until morale improves. That's almost nowhere, Catholic or Protestant.
Correct.
As Aaron just said with Suave's church, like that's one of the things there. Apparently, you're either in or you're out, and we're happy to tell you you're out. That has to be a part of any church that matters, and it's not a part of almost any church, so that's a problem. And number two, with almost all of these women, you don't even have to squint. You know what their husbands are all about on a regular basis. It's not complicated. What they care about, how they spend their time. This is not rocket science.
In a marriage that is healthy, where the husband is leading the home, setting the tone in the home, loves his wife before anything else save his creator, puts her first before anything else save his creator, and the wife understands that, recognizes that, and therefore puts him above everything else, even the children, save his creator. If somebody tries to come in between that union, I'm not talking about the husband. If somebody tries to undermine that in any way, how does the wife react? Does she just shrug? No. She will react violently, and hopefully the husband would as well. Violently, rhetorically, what have you. That's not happening, because that is a healthy marriage. Whether or not these women described in this email are married or whether they are single, functionally, because of what Todd just ended at, they're not really married to their husbands, if they are married at all. They are, as the Twitter account Aristophanes, I think it was Aristophanes, said over the weekend, not childless cat ladies, but brides of the state, or bots.
Wow. That'll preach.
Yes.
Right there. Wow.
Yes. Because their husbands aren't really husbands, whether or not it's because they're the girl boss and they don't want their husbands to actually be husbands, or their husbands are actually just neutered man children with lightsabers out in the front lawns. That whole conversation that Todd can articulate perfectly. Essentially, what you're coming up against is a strong marriage between these women and the state. That is really tough to break through. And the reason it's there is because their husbands aren't acting like husbands or men, and they didn't really have that modeled to them growing up either. This is a problem, and it is tough to break through that. I'm not really sure how to do that other than making sure that we understand this problem that we're in with the brides of the state. It's going to take generations to fix. That's not blackpilling. I'm just being honest with you.
Because we got here in generations. Correct. Yeah. And listen, man, as someone who lost over 100 pounds and needed to lose 150 and now is down 40 of the 50, the last 50 he had to lose. All right. It always takes more to lose it than it did to put it on every single time. Take my word for that. By the way, guys, we have breaking news. I don't know if you saw this or not.
I did, yeah.
The judge in Manhattan has now delayed Trump's sentencing until November the 26th, until after the election. It was supposed to be on September the 20th. Any real quick instant reaction to that? Because I kind of think that's big news. What do you think?
It's another piece off the table in favor of Trump. I don't know how this is possible. You are tiptoeing through the raindrops. It's incredible.
You know there's an element of our audience. You know what their answer is going to be, okay? I know. Guys, how many more of these? How's this guy just managed to do this? Are we going to need, right? That's what that. There's an element of our, and I'm running out of ammo to push back on him. I'm just being honest, okay? I'm running out of ammo to push back on it.
Well, there's two sides.
This is just beyond inexplicable.
There's two sides of that. They're either going to say he's God's anointed, or they're either going to say he's a deep state plant. But I don't know.
Todd.
Well, Scott Glenn, Hunt for Red October. The hard part about playing chicken is knowing when to flinch. You know, they're liars, they're cheaters at every level of government, but they do realize that there's a level of theatricality. You know, can we really get away with this? Even they're still holy crap, could we? And this is probably one of those. I mean, right before the election, is America that anesthetized? So I think that's probably most of it. They think they can get away with a lot. At this point, they didn't think they could. And let's face it, I know they moved it, Steve, but you probably know the particulars just based on instinct. But is this a done deal? Who knows? They've got all kinds of legal tricks up their sleeve. This isn't the only case going on.
I mean, if I'm Trump's attorneys, I'm using this to point out that if it's not paramount, you sentence the guy could be sentenced to over 100 years in prison, and you're like, we'll get to it when we get to it. Okay, if a guy who's eligible to be sentenced to over 100 years in prison, you're in no hurry to sentence him, then what was the point of this trial in the first place? You see what I'm trying to say? What was the sense of urgency we had to do any of this in the first place? That to me, it makes it abundantly clear you just wanted a headline to say he's a convicted felon. That's all. You just wanted to be able to say that by hook or by crook. I mean, how often does somebody get convicted of something where the sentencing could be over 100 years in prison, and they just keep delaying the sentencing and we'll get to it when we get to it? It doesn't happen. Why is it happening here? To me, that's indicative of what the true motivations of the entire time were. It wasn't to balance the scales of justice. It was to tip the balance of scales in an election.
And is this perhaps the area where, while the assassination attempt was not used as effectively on the Trump side, there's a realpolitik on the left in terms of it did ultimately end up sour people on the lawfare against Trump?
Potentially that's a possibility as well. But that again goes back to my premise. Again, this was all politics then. It really wasn't about justice, if that's a factor. Correct. All right, we'll come back. More Feedback Friday in a moment. Well, speaking about that email, we were just discussing about how to reach older millennial to Gen X young women. That's goes right to the heart of this new event that our colleague Ali Stuckey is having in Dallas on September the 28th. It's called the Share the Arrows event. It's a day dedicated to equipping women with the clarity and courage to navigate today's world with conviction and grace. Hosted and led by our very own Ali Beth Stuckey, incredible speakers like Rosario Butterfield, whose story is incredible if you've never heard it, music from Francesca Battistelli, and so many others. It's brought to you by the generous support of Carly Jean Los Angeles. That's a brand that aligns with our values of truth and faith. You can help all the God-fearing women in your life experience powerful teaching, encouraging fellowship, and inspiring worship by attending this amazing event. Go to sharethearrows.com today. That's the website, sharethearrows.com. There are numerous different packages there you can customize all the way up to premium access if you want. That's sharethearrows.com. You can go there today, sharethearrows.com.
Can I say something really quick?
Of course.
I think I was at least partially wrong on my analysis about Trump. I mean, we were doing it in real time, and I was thinking about it afterwards. To me now, the more I think about it, I think this tells me that the Democrats are a lot more convinced than certainly me that they think they're going to lose.
Yeah.
And they're not going to, and they got as far as they could with the lawfare. The assassination attempt happened. That's where I think I was right, and it's neutered some of it. And wasting this, now maybe it is just one judge who says this is crazy, we can't do this beforehand. But okay, fine, if it is, that's fine. But if it's the system, which it almost always is, the system isn't going to waste this. Put this out there and then let the people vote and anoint him anyways. They're going to wait till he's elected, and then they're going to use it afterwards to hammer his entire presidency. I think that's what's most likely is happening.
I could see that. I could see that scenario for sure. But all of the scenarios are all beginning from the premise that this wasn't a legitimate legal action or criminal concern. This, again, was not about tipping the scales, balancing the scales of justice. It was about tipping the scales in an election all the way from the very beginning.
Yes.
That's pretty obvious now. Okay. And now, I know what you guys are saying watching this and listening to this. Well, duh, you guys are just now getting it. No, we said this all along. But now it indicates that they're confirming this now, even to the normie Gen Pop now. All right. And what do you think it means? You know, I asked our colleague Steve Baker about this the other day. If I had told you guys a year ago that J6 would be brought up like not at all by Democrats, like almost this entire campaign and at their convention, right, we wouldn't even contemplated that. We would not have even, made that. If I even said, guys, odds Democrats never bring up J6 at their convention or during the campaign, you guys would have looked at me and said, I thought you were off crack. We would not have even considered that possibility. And yet here we are. That's been their political narrative for 3 years. It's been that. And going back to the whole thing, regardless of what you think about the grifter problem we have on the right that we've talked about at times, Tim Young talked about last hour, and I don't know why anybody would trust the Department of Justice whatsoever. The idea that, hey, we're going to just now hand out indictments over conservative influencers taking money from Russia 7.5 weeks before the election. When the last election, that same department of, or those same exact media outlets that are now saying, see, this is proof the whole right is bought off by Russia, were the same ones that told us Hunter Biden's laptop wasn't real. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, and by the way, the same day that they tried to use some conservative influencers to resurrect the Russian collusion hoax industrial complex and have it be the lead story on Joe and Mika on MSNBC, that exact same news cycle, guys, is when Putin came right out and endorsed Kamala Harris for president. I mean, this actually does tie into the Derek Cooper Tucker thing. This is why, and I really tried with this Blaze column, all right? I do not want to have people that I think are gravely mistaken and self-refuting levels of erroneous banned agency or platforms. I don't want that. Okay? I don't want that. There is a segment of you in this audience that wants me to take on the referee shirt and grab the whistle and just start calling fouls on conservative media. I'm not qualified to do that. I'm not. I don't know everybody's heart. If I see something that I think is obviously wrong, like promoting surrogacy, did I speak out, guys, on that?
Yep.
Yeah. If I see something that I think is obviously wrong, like wink and nod flirting with anti-Semitism, did I speak out on that? Yeah. If there's something that I think is obviously wrong, and I believe absorbing that into our ecosystem and water table is poisonous to like on both ends of that equation, I will speak out. But I don't really know as many of these people as that you think. We're not as interconnected as I think a lot of you think we are. I mean, for example, I could pick up my phone and text Mark Levin right now and probably get a response. I've never even met Mark Levin in person before. All right. We're spread out all over the country. It's not as interconnected and cliquish as you think that it is. So I'm not qualified for that. And I think doing it gets in the way, makes me extremely self-righteous more than I already have to fight the to be, frankly, and gets in the way of my overall mission here. You know, when I started doing this, I didn't think I was going to have to do this much cleanup on aisle 9. I thought I was just going to be mobilizing our people, the silent majority. I got into this. Well, we don't have a silent majority. Well, the church leaders are really bad. Okay, so I'm doing way more rearguard action than I thought I was going to do when I started doing this on June 12th, 2006. Way more. And every time I have to do a rearguard action, it's a distraction. And that's why I'm so upset about the timing of this interview and the whole thing. Well, did they take money from Russia or not? This is where now we're feeding narratives that we have been trying to stop them from bestowing on us. So is this the most important election ever or not? It can't be that important if we've got time to retcon Churchill and Hitler. Can't be that important. That accomplished zero. There was nothing positive that came out of that whatsoever. Nothing. Literally nothing. Nothing positive happened. Nothing. But on the other hand, I like the fact we're willing to entertain contrarians. I just think when a guy says on your show, and maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, man. Tucker has been way more successful than me, made tens of millions of dollars more than me. Someone told me that before they gave him Bill O'Reilly's show, Tucker was making $400,000 a year as a weekend host on Fox. That's what I made last year, and it's the biggest year I've ever had. Okay, so clearly he's better at this than me and knows things and how to do this that I don't know. All right, but in terms of argumentation, forget broadcast ability. When someone verbalizes the phrase, well, I don't think he committed the most murders or the most atrocities, but there's no but there. The sentence stops. Your own premise doesn't line up with what you're claiming. It doesn't. You need to convince me first you believe what you're preaching before I'm going to believe it. So wait a minute. You admit the Churchill guy didn't commit the most murders, didn't commit the most atrocities, but he's not the villain? And then the whole narrative falls apart from there. Well, this would have been a regional conflict. Some of you are emailing me. Well, Steve, what sources do you have? I got the best source. The dude in his own words. Apparently, Daryl Cooper is citing every source other than Mein Kampf. That would seemingly be an important source to look at here to analyze the situation. I mean, he wrote a demonic manifesto in prison in 1925. In 1925, Winston Churchill was a liberal member of parliament. So he belonged to a party he would later leave, or would leave him. Stalin his reign was in its infancy. FDR was 7 years away from the presidency. The seminal figures of World War II weren't even in the positions they were going to be in when the war started, let alone aligned together. But do you know who was in position? Hitler. And he wrote a book, and he wrote it all down. His version of After the Ball, called Mein Kampf, and he went about doing exactly what he wrote. So yes, he went to Munich and said, "Give me Czechoslovakia and I'll walk away." They gave it to him. But he was just going to stop with Poland, guys, after not stopping with just Czechoslovakia. I want to live in the world you're in. And what I find fascinating is the people claiming, and some of you are my friends, and some of you I like. Some of you I just hosted for Evergreens on this show. But explain to me how you know what time it is, but you thought Hitler was just going to stay there in Warsaw. Help me. Can you guys figure that one out for me? Because I can't figure that out. I know what time it is, but I'm pretty confident that Western civilization was going to be able to coexist alongside Nazi Germany and the Third Reich for some indeterminate amount of time and peacefully coexist. Does that strike you as know what time it is to you guys at all? Because it does not to me. And that's the position that they use, because most people just assume if you're giving this position, you're an anti-Semite, and this is just your way to couch it. I'm not going to go there with people. I don't think that's fair to people. I'm not going to just assume every time someone disagrees with me, they're the worst possible person, unless they disagree with me on things that would out them as being the worst possible person. Like, Steve, I think we should reconsider pedophiles. You're the worst possible person. And so I'm going to label you as such. But what I do not understand is a historical analysis that says we were going to somehow be able to make this a regional conflict. And a guy who had already demonstrated that he wasn't satisfied with piecemeal conquest was now going to be satisfied with it if only that crusty old Winston hadn't pushed his buttons. I don't understand that at all. I don't think that analysis holds up to any scrutiny. And yesterday, something that didn't go highlighted very often, because frankly, a lot of people like Tucker and want to get on his show and are afraid of speaking out and saying anything about it. I don't care. All right. I like Tucker too. I don't care if I ever get back on his show again. I do care that and he deserves all the success he's had because he has challenged narratives. He's taken the risk. He got absolutely railroaded at Fox News. But what Cooper is surmising is so out of bounds. You know, Victor Davis Hanson's a name most of us didn't know until Tucker platformed him on Fox News. This little-known Hoover Institute, Stanford historian. Like many of you, that's how I first heard about Victor Davis Hanson. A lot of people missed this yesterday because it's not going to probably help you get booked on Tucker to point it out. But I did, because I don't care. Victor Davis Hanson went to the extraordinary step of writing a long, detailed rebuke of Daryl Cooper and Tucker Carlson yesterday. And I mean detailed. He could have just ended it with, on the other hand, Daryl Cooper has a wonderful singing voice. After he got done just disemboweling every central premise of his claims. So help me understand, democracy's bad. We can't share a culture with these forces on our own landmass. That we need a Red Caesar and maybe even a king because the people can't be trusted. Are you with me so far, Aaron? This is an accurate description of what kind of the dissident right says it wants. Am I taking anything out of context at all?
If they want anything at all, yeah.
If they want anything, who knows? Okay, but all right, so we're at that level of existential stakes, guys. On the other hand, though, we were somehow going to be able to peacefully coexist, the West was, with the Third Reich. Can either one of you possibly explain this to me? Because I don't understand it. I have no idea how that math works, which is why you've got friends of ours like Josh Hammer and Jordan Schachtel, who are Jews, out there. They can't figure it out intellectually either. And so if you're Jewish and you hear this talk, what conclusion are you probably drawing? What do you think? This is all just camouflage for anti-Semitism, right? Because you can't intellectually do the math. How do you possibly understand that we're sitting here in our own country and we're struggling to live with California? We're struggling to live with California, but the West was going to live somehow with a contained Third Reich. Bottom line, does that make any sense to you guys at all, how you could possibly come to that analysis?
No.
And so you then open yourself up to smart people and who are Jews, and heard some similar talk from people like Charles Lindbergh, their parents and grandparents did in another era, only to find out that it was just Lindbergh just did this as a cover for the fact he was an anti-Semite. You ever notice that you kind of don't hear about Charles Lindbergh's life after what happened to his baby? You guys ever notice that? He was maybe the most famous man in America for a minute. Then there's a tragedy with one of his children, and then he falls off a map, and you don't know what he did for the rest of his life. You ever notice that? Well, that's because, there's a heel turn there that a lot of people want to. We kind of have memory hold because he's such a proud figure of Americana. But the dude went flaming anti-Semite. Literally did events all over the country on behalf of the Nazis. That's why. Everybody's like, well, let's forget that third act because the first two acts are pretty heroic. We're just going to sweep that one out of the rug and move on, okay? And so I can understand why some of my Jewish friends are like, that are smart, and like, I cannot intellectually come up with how it is possible you think that Hitler was going to be just contained. It makes no sense. If you read what Hitler wrote, you listen to what Hitler actually said, you watch what Hitler actually did, it makes zero sense. Zero. It doesn't stand up to any level of scrutiny at all. It just doesn't. And so that's where you get guys like Jordan Schachtel and Josh Hammer all over X right now, calling other friends of mine and other people I respect anti-Semites. So here's what I propose. Can I propose something here?
Yeah.
As I interrupted Feedback Friday, and I apologize because we have some very good notes here. We had Jonathan Cahn on the show yesterday. Very Jewish, very Messianic Jewish, very pro-Israel. And he has sold even more books than Tucker Carlson has. He is maybe the most successful Christian author currently writing in the country. Wouldn't you guys love to see a conversation for an hour and a half between the two of them? Let's put Jonathan Cahn on Tucker Carlson. Cahn represents the eschatology that Tucker is skeptical of, that frankly I'm somewhat skeptical of. Okay? But let's prove that that we're not just asking questions isn't a cover, that we really want to just blow open every Overton window that's held the right back and kept the regime in place, and I'm all for that. Well then, do you think the regime likes Jonathan Cahn, Messianic Jew who believes in spiritual warfare and loves Israel? Think the regime likes that guy? What do you guys think? Jonathan Cahn is a friend of the regime, right? No. So he's clearly a dissident. Let's put him on Tucker. And let's listen to him and Tucker go back and forth for an hour. I would watch that too. Wouldn't you guys watch that? I'd be fascinated to see that.
Yeah. Well, didn't Tucker just have like a thing with Rusty Rockets yesterday too? I think he's open to a lot of this stuff. The problem is what so-called church edgelords did with this thing afterwards. That's a real problem.
We're going to stick around and do Feedback Friday. Or we just did Feedback. No. We're going to stick around and do Overtime for our subscribers. For the rest of you, enjoy the rest of your Friday. We'll see you Monday, Romans 8:28.